There's a little-known part of Hollywood that most people are not aware of, known as the Audience Test Preview. The recently released book, Audienceology, reveals this for the first time. Our podcast series, Don't Kill the Messenger, brings this book to life, taking a peek behind the curtain. And now, join author and entertainment research expert, Kevin Getz.
When you've been doing what I've been doing for as long as I have, you've basically seen it all. But recently, a movie came along and taught me several really big lessons. That movie was Barbie. About 5 years ago, my company Screen Engine was hired to do concept testing on Mattel properties to see which sort of had the most movie potential for their newly formed film division. And based on the study results, perhaps surprisingly, Barbie was near the bottom of the list. Not because she wasn't loved and didn't have great nostalgia attached to her, but moviegoers saw it for really young girls. It was a very limited audience. I told my guest today, who had commissioned that study, run from this property. Her response was, how can I run from this? This is one of Mattel's most important properties. I can't run. I've got to make it work. Little did I know then that she, along with Greta Gerwig, Noah Baumbach, Margot Robbie, and the rest of the creative team involved in the film, would literally change the IP's DNA into something that became a groundbreaking hit for all audiences. My big lesson, and what I'd like to communicate to all my listeners, is that you can change a property's DNA, but you better do it boldly and with great commitment. Barbie has given us an elevated theatrical experience like no other. It's the biggest movie of the year. It broke 17 box office records so far, and it's the highest-grossing global release in Warner Brothers Studios' 100-year history. I am privileged to have Robbie Brenner here today, one of the producers of the movie who has over 20 years of experience in the film industry and who has been recently promoted to President of Mattel Films. She's a graduate of NYU's Tisch School of the Arts. She's held key positions at Relativity Media, Miramax, and 20th Century Fox. Among her many producing credits is Dallas Buyers Club, which earned her a nomination for the Academy Award for Best Picture and went on to win 3 Oscars. Robbie, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Kevin, thank you so much for having me. It is such an honor to be here and to sit here with you and to watch you do your thing.
Well, first of all, let's tell the audience that you and I'm going to say maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago, went beyond the point of professional colleagues to friends. So I know a lot of the answers to the questions I'm going to be asking, but I also don't know a lot. So I want to start with you, and I want to start with, you must have had an interest. If you went to college for film, you must have always had an interest in film. Tell me about that and what formed the Robbie that attended NYU.
Well, from when I was a little girl growing up in New York City, my father used to take me to this shoe store called True Tread. It was on 83rd and 3rd Avenue on the corner, and it was a very, very popular shoe store.
Did you live on the Upper East Side?
I lived on the Upper East Side.
Where? I was on 81st and between 1st and York.
82nd and York.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
See? This is Beshert. She says kismet. I say Beshert. We have this thing we do. We go zoo.
Kevin and I, we used to walk our dogs together. May they rest in peace. Oh my God. Kugel, Marley.
And they were buddies. All right. So you went to this shoe store.
I went to this shoe store, and my dad was so funny. He would write down, there would be a list, like, where you'd put your name and they would call it like a clipboard when it was your time to get fitted for shoes. So my dad, he thought it was very funny, but he wrote Duck instead of like Robbie. So they were like, Duck, Mr. Duck. Anyway, I was
Wasn't he a shrink?
No, my dad was a lawyer. He actually.
Wait, your mother was a shrink?
Yes, my mother. My mother ran Bellevue, and my father was the general counsel.
Maybe it should have been the other way around.
I think so. Anyway, he thought it was very amusing, but I was off watching these movies. There were the sort of like old school Viewmasters that you could like look into, and they would have just like many, many images. And when you would crank it, it would move together and it would become a movie. So I would sit there and watch the movies. I just loved movies. I loved images. I loved storytelling from a very, very young age. My father and I used to develop photography in the bathroom. We would go into the bathroom and take all the equipment and the developer and the enlarger. And
wow.
Yeah.
You know, you are a walking oxymoron.
I am.
Yes. I want to explain to our listeners. So Robbie has exquisite taste. It is very independent-minded. And to think that she had such a strong hand in the single most commercial movie that has come out in the last how many years is so extraordinary to me. You gravitate towards great material. A second lesson you taught me about you have to have something that really is on the page, that speaks to you, that sings to you, that really is special in some way. And a lot of the things that are that way happen to be quote unquote smaller movies.
Well, I feel like I've learned actually so much from you. I feel like in all of the testing of all of the movies that we've done and listening to you speak about it, telling me, you know, Robbie, these movies need to have a reason to exist. Why are you making this movie? You would always say, is the movie sticky? Is it sticky? And I find myself saying that a lot to people, you know, because the movies that really work, whether it's Everything Everywhere All at Once, whether it's Into the Spider-Verse, whether it's Barbie, I mean, look at Barbie. It's sort of the perfect intersection of art and commerce because it is really, truly a personal story of a woman who had a very intimate and personal experience with Barbie that did something that is authentic and bold and is not afraid of speaking her mind and saying the things that she wants to say and doing the things. It has such a singular, strong point of view. And I think the movies that really work, especially in 2023, where there's so much in the world, there's so much noise, there's so much television, there's, you know, so social media, there's gaming, there's so many distractions, are movies that feel, as you would say, sticky and singular and different. And those are the movies that drive people to the box office that people want to see.
There's no question about it. If you look at every successful movie, even if there's a familiarity about it, there's something in that movie that is different enough or emotionally resonant or some kind of connection that transcends all those other ones like it, or in the case of Everything Everywhere All at Once, something we've never seen in that sort of multiverse.
Yeah.
So I want to then go back to that test that we conducted about whatever it was 5 years ago. Well, when did you start at Mattel? Because it would have been when you started.
August 2018.
Okay, and so here's how the conversation went. She called me up, Kevin, I have this big job that I have to make movies and they really need to be successful. And I said, of course they do. How can we help? And we came up with this idea together of testing these concepts on almost all of the IP that was meaningful. Because Mattel has a ton of really good IP and some that are hardly known. When we got the results back, Barbie was like on the bottom of the list. And I remember literally saying to you, run from this project. It was like the DNA at that time, although it had great awareness and great affinity and love, to be fair to the brand, it was perceived as a tiny area of like 3 to 6 year old girls and some moms who felt a certain nostalgia, but really no one beyond that. And I remember there were 2 previous iterations of the movie. One was set up, I believe, with Anne Hathaway, and one was set up with Amy Schumer, both at Sony, which I want to hear about how it ended up getting to Warner Brothers. And neither of those projects found their way. That was prior to you joining. Your boss, who is
Ynon Kreiz.
Ynon, who's the CEO of Mattel, hired Margot Robbie. I remember sitting with you and Tom at a dinner about 4 years ago, and I had just heard that Margot was hired. And I said to you and to Tom, who is married to Margot, the producer of Barbie as well, great guy, I said, why would you hire Margot without an idea? It's crazy. Well, she looks like Barbie, at least what most of us think Barbie looks like. And I just thought it was so ass backwards and told you as much. And you taught me something so incredible. You said, I don't have a choice. I have to do this. Barbie is one of Mattel's most important properties. Now, my advice to you at the time, in fairness, was call Jason Blum, make Magic 8 Ball, another Mattel property, because he's got the horror imprimatur and he will figure this out, and Cooper Samuelson. And you went down that road. You sort of never really got the script that you both agreed upon or whatever. Fine, that happens all the time. But my thinking was make a $40 million gross at the box office and have a strong double under your belt and say, look, we made a movie, it made money. And you actually went that route, and I think it was a really smart route. But then something happened. And we need to hear the story of how the genesis of how you took this brand that was so limited, so pink, so girly, so associated with direct-to-video releases, and made it a worldwide sensation.
Well, the truth is that before Greta came on board Barbie, Tom Ackerley, who's married to Margot, they have a company together, Lucky Chap. We went down a path and we probably met with 30 different writers and we heard 30 different Barbie takes. Nothing that really stuck out. They were like little kernels of like, oh, that's interesting.
And some major writers, right?
Major writers, some major directors. There was no shortage of people that were interested in sort of trying to unlock this Barbie movie. But it was sort of just like the generic, like, okay, Barbie lives in Malibu. She's got her dreamboat Ken. It all just felt like very familiar and you had seen it before. And then actually Margot, who had a relationship with Greta, she came up with the idea of Greta. She said, what about Greta?
Margot did?
Margot did. And I was like, fantastic. I mean, obviously.
Why would you think fantastic? Like, what would prompt you to think that Greta Gerwig, who did a huge independent
Lady Bird,
and then she did Little Women, which was commercial and made a lot of money, but certainly was not anything in the realm of the early Barbie. How did you think that was a great idea?
Look, I think that we needed to do something that felt very unexpected and very different. And with Greta, I felt like we were going to get that sort of like that je ne sais quoi, that thing that like you cannot even bottle. Like it is the secret sauce that most movies just don't have because she has it. From the very first frame of Lady Bird, when she opens up the door and falls out of the car door, you're like, okay, I'm in. This woman is like interesting and amazing and tells stories in such a dynamic, incredible way. And so it was like, aha, Greta Gerwig wants to make Barbie. Aha, sign me up for that. I'm in.
Well, that turned out to be a very fortuitous hire. How did Noah then get involved in the project?
So she said...
By the way, Noah Baumbach is...
her partner. They have 2 children together.
And she had one during the screening process.
She did. And she said, I want Noah to write this movie with me. I want to write it with him. And so Margot, Tom, and I went to New York and we met with Noah and Greta in, I think it was Noah's mother's brownstone. I want to say he might have been cutting A Marriage Story. Maybe it was the movie before. I don't know. But he was busy. And so we all sat together and, we sort of talked about it.
Who was with you?
It was Margot and Tom and myself and Greta and Noah. And we talked about sort of, very loosely ideas like, what is this? What should it feel like? What does it look like? And they were very, very kind of broad ideas. And I know that...
But were they different than those other ideas that the 30 prior writers had pitched? Like, was there a different vibe in the room?
Yes. Well, look, I think that Greta is just sitting in a room with her. I mean, and you know her, Kevin. I mean, she's so effervescent. It's just, she's infectious. You just somehow like hang on her every word. You believe everything. You are just like on for the ride with her, There are not many people that have that quality that you're like, I am so in. I believe everything you say.
And you'll fulfill on it.
Yes, you will. You will. And she had this idea, and it's actually in the movie, she said, I feel like the movie lives between this high heel and this Birkenstock. That somehow the movie, it's going to live between these two shoes. And I don't know what it is, but that's sort of the leaping off point.
What a great image. I want to just say to our listeners here that what you said, I urge you all to pay close attention to. We had to do something unexpected and different. And I remember early on, you and I had the conversation. I said, Robbie, the only way this is going to work, and I feel like I was a little preachy at the table that night at that event, but I said to you, how do you hire Margot without an idea? And I said, whatever you do, it better be so incredibly unique and different. I think I mentioned Legally Blonde at that time. Like it had to go to a whole different place and feel very contemporary. Do you remember that kind of?
Yeah, no, I do. I remember that conversation.
So you're in that brownstone. I wish we could all be a fly on the wall in that brownstone. And this movie's going to go down in the history books. So that conversation was a very, very important one. What were the next steps after that?
So they said, okay, well, we're going to deal with Warner Brothers. And so we went back to LA and, of course, it takes just months and months and months. And so that went on for a very,
hold on. The project was out of Sony by this point?
Yeah. So we had nothing to do with Sony. When I started at Mattel, we had gotten the rights back from Sony. And Ann and I decided that we were going to start free and clear with all of the IPs, that we weren't going to bother with anything that had existed before, that this was sort of our vision of what we wanted to do for Mattel Films. And we just started from the beginning. And so we set the IP, the Barbie, and actually Hot Wheels as well, up at Warner Brothers. They were passionate about it. We think
Who was the...
Courtney Valente was the president of Warner Brothers at the time, and Toby Emmerich.
So Toby and Courtney actually bought or said we want to be involved, or how did...
Yes, they basically said we want to buy the rights, let's make Barbie and Hot Wheels.
So they licensed the property from Mattel.
Yes.
So you guys didn't pay for the movie. Warner Brothers did.
Warner Brothers paid for the movie. We were producers on the movie.
Got it. And so that is an arrangement that you're going to continue to make? Or are you sort of reassessing now that you've had such great success?
Look, I mean, I think everybody would love to be able to finance their own movies. I mean, when it works,
it's like... You think that's true?
I mean, hello, you have to have skin in the game. But I mean, the
upside is that much more, of course.
Yes, absolutely. But this was our first foray into making movies. So we did it pretty well. I think we were a little nervous moving forward. I feel like I've got a target on my back.
I would be very nervous because how do you hit home runs? People, we know it's impossible. So we'll just say that. But everything you touch is quality. So I have no doubt that you're going to be successful. But this is zeitgeist stuff. This is lightning in a bottle stuff. I mean, Josh Goldstein, I've praised him so many times on this program and outside of this program, creating a buzz and a marketing campaign that was so compelling and so in sync with what you all made creatively. All right, the movie gets made, and now we go to the screening process. And that was a real interesting process.
So the first screening we did was actually a blind screening. We decided...
Oh, so no one knew what they were coming to see.
Nobody knew what they were coming to see.
Right.
We did this.
That's what a blind recruit is, right? We just give the audience similar kinds of movies so we know we're not getting like the wrong people that would never see the movie.
Right. But, we were nervous. We were nervous about spoilers and people exposing Barbie and people knowing it was Barbie. There's so much hype on the movie from the first time that those first two photos were released from Venice Beach of Margot and Ryan. It basically shut down the internet. So we were very nervous about people knowing that it was going to be Barbie. So we did, you remember, the blind recruit in Arizona, which was interesting to show a movie there, especially I think the audience didn't know what they were going to see.
Let me ask you this. The movie scored okay, wasn't extraordinary, but there was some big changes made or not such big changes made?
I mean, I always say that the movie that you see in the theater is very similar to the movie that was on the page. I mean, yes, we cut things out of the movie because we couldn't afford it budget-wise, or things shape-shifted. There were 2 narrators at one point, and that ultimately there was just one. But as you would say always, Kevin, the DNA of the movie was the DNA of the movie, and the trajectory of like the scenes and the way that it all played out, starting in 2001, that was always at the beginning, going to Barbie Land, coming the way she comes down, Weird Barbie, coming down.
So it was
to
a
the real world.
calibration issue, really.
Yes.
It was about calibrating. If I recall, it was a lot about the male patriarchy that was a little too much, too heavy-handed. And when Greta pulled that back, it found its center.
Yeah, I think it was just like a modulation of things.
Greta listened really well. Like, I thought she listened to the audience.
Well, she loves information. I think every time she's so close to it. First of all, she wrote it, she directed it, she lived it.
I remember very clearly she stuck to her guns. She knew what she wanted, but she also listened. And I think the great filmmakers that I've worked with have the ability to respond to the research, but keep their vision at the front and center.
Yeah.
She never wavered from that, nor did you, nor did Margot, nor did Tom. You know, you guys really kept it right. And you had another producer on the movie too, right?
David Heyman.
And so all of you kind of were in sync with hearing the audience's responses and responding to them. And then the next screening was mind-blowing.
Yes, it was.
Where was it?
The next screening, I feel like it was in New York.
New Jersey.
Oh, in New Jersey. Yeah, it was in New Jersey. I rode in the car with you home. We went to the Jean-Georges restaurant. Remember?
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, it was amazing because this was not a blind recruit. And when I arrived at the theater, there was a sea of people in pink wrapped around 2 blocks out. And I was like, wow, oh, my God.
I've done screenings, obviously, since Barbie's opening. And I have a litany of screenings of Barbie photos to send to you that I've never sent you, of theaters around the country, of people in pink, straight men in wigs, Ken wigs. Speaking of Ken, how did you get Ryan? What a stroke of genius that was. 2 of the sexiest actors working in film today on the screen together. And he was so phenomenal.
Oh, my God.
He's so great. How did that come to be?
That was really Greta. Greta was like, Ken is Ryan. It's Ryan. It's Ryan. And, you know, she went after him. And look, who does not want to be in a Greta Gerwig movie? I mean, like, she literally, every person she approached was like, sign me up.
Well, that says something because she only made 2 movies prior to Barbie. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
So that's saying that those movies were so impressive that Who Wants to Be in a Greta movie has even more import in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next screening we did, the scores like jumped phenomenally. And I love to think of it as, again, Greta finding the center of the movie, having heard the audience, and now it is playing in that stratosphere.
That America Ferrera speech, you know, when we were in New Jersey, they were screaming and clapping and people were just going crazy. It's very seldom. I mean, you know, you sit in so many screenings. I've sat in a fair share of them. But there are very, very few movies, not even Dallas Buyers Club, which scored probably in the 70s. Like, people were kind of like, oh, okay. But Barbie is just, like, happy. It's, like, pink. And I think the other thing is, like, where we're sitting in the world, like, post-COVID and you know, with streaming and people being able to sit in their homes and watch everything and everything is so available. I think people were just starved to get back to the movie theater.
I mean, they were going back to the movie theater. This was something else.
Well, this was going to be like an experience.
Barbenheimer, man.
Yeah, it's going to be like Rocky Horror Picture Show. People were dressing up. They're ready to like.
When was the last time, Harry Potter maybe, or something, where you had that kind of, and Star Wars has that kind of, but you were creating a new franchise essentially of a flawed or deeply limited piece of IP that it's extraordinary. I mean, again, I'm going a little bit hyperbolic here because I had to eat my hat and crow more than once.
But you know what? It could have turned out like horribly. I mean, I would say 99% of the people that probably would have directed this movie would have been terrible. It just could have been. It could have just as you thought, I think in these capability studies about Barbie, I think Barbie is polarizing. I mean, I think as much as people play with Barbie and love Barbie and identify with Barbie, people, don't like Barbie and it makes people feel bad about the way they look and their image and I need to be perfect. And I think what Greta and Noah did so brilliantly in this script is that they unpacked all of that. They talked about it, what it feels to look a certain way or not be perfect, or what if I have cellulite and what if I don't look like this? And so it really explored all of women and what women deal with and what women deal with in corporate America. I mean, those scenes in the boardroom resonate with people because that's the truth. I mean, that is the world we're living in. As much as women have a place in the world and we've come a long way, it's still that way.
Now, corporately speaking, so Mattel has got to, I mean, I'm sure they've tried to create what you did in a movie for years for the brand itself, but this has genuinely changed it in the most positive way. The monetary value of that property and that image
has grown exponentially.
Correct?
Well, I think that because Mattel was really a character in the movie, I think it's in the zeitgeist now. I think people are like, "Oh, Mattel," and it feels
and
modern.
You guys
cool.
allowed like some self-deprecating stuff, which I thought was really smart.
I mean, we did. I mean,
It was kind of brave, actually.
We had to be. I had many meetings with the people from the brand team, from the Barbie team, and they had never made any movies before. They didn't know what the process was. They didn't know what to expect. So there was a lot of educating. Here I am working inside of a toy company, and I'm educating people. And they're reading the script going like, I mean, are you crazy? I mean, have you like lost it? Like, we don't even know you that well. I know you've made some good movies, but like, are you sure?
What are they saying now? And I mean that sincerely.
Well, look, I think that they all went on board for the ride because I basically said, like, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You're going to white knuckle it the whole time for something that you feel like you have ownership over and you have like been the ambassador of for 15 or 18 years, watching Barbie evolve and the body types and everything. Like, there are going to be things that you're not going to like that scene, for instance, where Sasha, the young girl in the movie, like basically really gives it to Barbie and calls her a bimbo and tell her she's a fascist. And, there's
Who's the one? What's the line that I know is a big controversial line?
Motherfucker.
Motherfucker.
Yeah.
She goes, hey, you motherfuckers. She comes down and says that or something. But Greta came up with a great solution for that, right?
I know, but, it's interesting because at the end, that was Issa Rae. She says, this is my dream house, motherfuckers.
Which was so funny and took the house down. But I know Warner Brothers, rightly so, was like, we can't have that word because that's and I don't know if Mattel felt that, but I would imagine they did. Like, that word might have just been going just past the guardrail. But in order to keep the intent of it, you came up with like a bleeping out thing, right?
Well, I mean, that was really Greta. I think the thing is that we went to the MPAA and they actually gave her the PG-13 with the motherfucker in it.
I heard that.
And
Greta told me that.
So she was like, well, they don't have a problem with it. I mean, what is the problem? Are we really going to upset people in the middle of the country? But strangely, people accept violence and sexuality, but like language is a problem, which I literally, having children, scratch my head going like, if they say fuck, like, I really don't care, but like watching violence.
It's amazing. I'm still staggered by the fact that I go to different pockets in the United States and you get parents outraged over a particular word. And you're like, but they just used a chainsaw to...
Right. They just used a gun to kill somebody.
Exactly.
But that was fine.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Wow. That's a whole other session
exactly.
for another time.
When we come back, we're going to talk to Robbie about what her plans are for the future. We'll be back in a moment.
Get a glimpse into a secret part of Hollywood that few are aware of and that filmmakers rarely talk about. In the new book, Audienceology by Kevin Getz. Each chapter is filled with never-before-revealed inside stories and interviews from famous studio chiefs, directors, producers, and movie stars, bringing the art and science of audienceology into focus. Audienceology, how moviegoers shape the films we love. From Tiller Press at Simon & Schuster. Available now.
We're back with Robbie Brenner. the head of the film division at Mattel Toy Company. Robbie, you, as I said, are an enigma in the business because you're so talent-friendly. You are an amazing development executive. Like, you understand script intrinsically and deeply, and you are a great packager. Your taste is very, very classy, and you and I align on so many of the projects you've done. I mentioned Burden before.
One of the greatest lessons that I've learned from Kevin Getz, whoever's listening to this is a very, very good one. People will forgive what happens in the first 15 minutes of the movie. So you don't have to worry as much about that. What people will always remember and what is going to be their ultimate takeaway is how a movie ends. So whatever happens in the last 10 minutes of the movie, it better be fucking amazing.
I want to amend that slightly with the following. First of all, many of the Act 3 problems are Act 1 problems, as you know. Like, you have to lay that groundwork enough that it's going to pay off. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people don't do that. So you can tack on something to try to fix your ending, but you got to go back to Act 1 to do it often. Number 2, with the streaming services, the proliferation of streaming, you will lose an audience in the first 5 to 10 minutes. You said 7?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. 5 to 10 minutes of a movie. And we've great empirical evidence to show this.
That's the Netflix algorithm.
Well, it's not just Netflix. It's any of them. It's Apple, it's Hulu, it's Amazon. It's all of them. They have to grab an audience. It's a different calibration. It goes the same with advertising materials. You got to grab them at the beginning. And then it used to be a slow burn, right? But not so now. You have to grab them, almost a cold opening. Linear television figured that out. They always had that really exciting cold opening to grab you so you'd stay after the commercial break and come back. And I think movies really that are going that route have to think about that. So it's a question that I ask in all my focus groups. Would any of you have tuned out? That's an important piece of information. That said, I still believe what you said to be true, or I guess what I had said to be true, which is the ending is the most important aspect, how you leave them. And I want to say how you leave them feeling and the satisfaction level. And you have to kind of click 2 boxes. Intellectual satisfaction, meaning all your questions are answered, or even if it's ambiguous or not answered, they're addressed.
And your emotional satisfaction.
And Barbie had both, for example. Dallas Buyers Club, as a bummer as the subject matter is, had both. Burden had both. What other movies can you speak of that you're super proud of that were near and dear to your heart? Because I know you understand what I'm saying, and I can even see it in your eyes right now, that you get it.
Well, I think Call Jane, which, I made a few years ago with Elizabeth Banks, has that. I think The Fighter, which I worked on, has that.
The Fighter. Wow. Probably David O. Russell's best film.
Really...
Yeah. I mean, he's made a couple of really good ones, but that particular one struck a nerve for me.
I think so.
Cool
Look, it was a true story, and Scott Silver is just a fantastic screenwriter, and he wrote that script.
But the other thing about you is, like, you know the town so well. So you have great relationships. I don't think, and I'm going to maybe go on a limb here, I've never heard a negative thing about you. And so if anyone were to say anything, even questioning your integrity or who you were, I would be suspect of them. By the way, I say the same thing about my father.
Oh, that's really touches me.
It's true. I mean, you are an authentic person. And just the fact that you are coming on this show and talking so openly about not just the great things, but some of the warts to get there is a testament to that. It is, Robbie.
I think the thing is that I truly love movies. For me, I make movies and I'm a part of them because I have to be. It's something that is in my blood. It's in my skin, and I have to do it. I have to tell stories. I could do another job. Maybe I'd find something that I could do well. But for me,
I'm sure you're being offered every job in town right now.
I just think movies, the idea that you go and you see something for, an hour and a half or 2 hours, and it could sit with you and resonate with you forever, or change the course of your life, or change the way that you look at something. Or I think movies are so powerful. When they live on, it's just a very, very satisfying. I mean, it can be unsatisfying too. We've worked on movies together that did not succeed.
And we've had private conversations where we're like, oh my God, how are we going to fix this? How are we going to get through this? And then ultimately, we have to love those children just as much.
Oh, yes. I remember that one time with that one movie. Nothing was working. We workshopped it for a year together, and you basically were like, we're going to screen the end, and then we're going to shut it off, and then we're going to ask people what they want to see, and we did that. And
it's in my book. We can talk about it. It's Immortals.
Yeah.
And it was beautifully directed by Tarsem. He's a visual genius. But for whatever reason, the trajectory of the driving motor getting into that second to third act was just falling short. And so my suggestion from a research standpoint was, let's bring it up to that point and stop the movie and risk the audience turning on us, but bring them in on this. And it was a small group, but so effective, because the questions were, what do you want to happen now? What do you think should happen? What do you want to happen? And we heard those responses, and reshoots, I think $10 million worth of reshoots came as a result of that. But the movie was, I think, one of, if not Relativity's most profitable movies, right?
Yeah,
At the end of the day.
it opened at number one. We completely turned the movie around, and it wound up being a huge success.
So, Robbie, what's next at Mattel? What are you working on?
So we've announced 14 projects that we're doing at studios. 14. So Hot Wheels and Wishbone and Polly Pocket that we're doing with Lena Dunham and Lily Collins.
Such a smart sort of hire in Lena. Like, what was that? How'd you do that? Or did she come to you? Or how did that?
I was having breakfast with her, and she was like, I just love Polly Pocket. I grew up with Polly Pocket. I'm obsessed with Polly Pocket. And so I was like, great, let's develop Polly Pocket. And then I was having lunch with Lily Collins, who I put in Mirror, Mirror. And, I've known for forever. She was in another Tarsem movie. And she said, well, I love Polly Pocket. And so we all sort of joined forces and came up with this idea to do Polly Pocket that Lily would produce alongside us, and she would star as Polly Pocket, and Lena would write and direct it.
Okay, and Hot Wheels is set up where?
Hot Wheels is at Warner Brothers. We're producing it alongside J.J. Abrams.
Oh, okay. First of all, Gary, who's our engineer, wonderful engineer in the other room, through the glass I'm looking, is going, oh, yeah, I'm in.
Yes.
But were you in when we just said Hot Wheels? Were you in? When we just said Hot Wheels? Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. I was like, when I heard J.J. Abrams and Hot Wheels, I was just sold. You get that. You see, you get that. Intrinsically, you understand how that there are certain elements that will change the DNA.
Yeah. Well, you have to do that. I mean, if you're not basically running at something that scares you, like, you should not be doing it. I mean, that's where, like, the magic is, I think.
So give us another couple of those projects that have some really interesting folks attached.
Well, some of them haven't been announced yet, but we have, we're developing Barney with Daniel Kaluuya.
Barney the dinosaur? I would normally say Barney, that little dinosaur, but with Robbie Brenner spearheading this. No pressure, Robbie.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that the key to all of these is, like, we're not, I feel like I'm a commercial. We're not about selling toys, but no, it's not about selling toys. If we sell toys, fantastic.
No, but it isn't for you.
No.
It's about bringing these properties to life.
To life in the way, like I look at what Kevin Feige did, and I think to myself, God, this guy, like, what a genius. He just tapped into something that was so incredible. And what I'm so proud of is that we made $1 billion movie that, as you said before, is
almost $1.5 billion.
Yeah, $1.5 billion. That is.
Oh yeah, there's that other $500 million.
Exactly right. That doesn't have a sword and a cape in it, and it has something to say, and it's complicated and it's messy. And that excites me. And that makes me feel very, very proud of that movie, that it's like it has something really substantive to say. Like if you really look at that movie, there's a lot about women, about men, about feelings, about physicality, about it's important, complicated stuff.
What do you like about capability testing? How do you use it to help you? In other words, the idea of capability testing is, of course, testing concepts larger than just a log line, but maybe 200 to 300 words, and
pulling the hyperbole out of the concept
and just giving the story elements, the basic story elements, and then sequentially adding in the different elements that you have at the time. You use it really well, and I just want to know why and how that affects your decision-making, et cetera. Can you just talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's an amazing barometer to actually sort of dip your toe with people that are anonymous, that you don't know, of all different ages and demographics, and to sort of test these brands, which is like 8 Ball. Do you want to see the R version of this movie? Do you want to see the PG-13 version of the movie? Do you want to see Jumanji? Or do you want to see sort of straight like Annabelle or Insidious or The Conjuring? So I think it gives you like a very good roadmap as to sort of like what to lean into. You always taught me like, don't make a movie that's a feathered fish. Don't make a movie that feels like it's for like only one quadrant or maybe two. Like you want to cast the largest net possible.
Well, that's if you're making a commercial movie, clearly. Everything Everywhere All at Once is essentially a feathered fish that really works. So I don't know if I'd ever have the guts to have greenlit it.
For me,
you know what I mean?
I did not really care for that movie. What I loved about the movie was the conviction and the vision of the filmmakers. But the movie, it was wrapped up in all of this zany insanity. The movie is actually pretty straightforward in terms of like the storyline. The storyline personally did not speak to me and didn't resonate with me.
I have to stop. My husband we watched it together, and I loved it. And he's like, I don't get it. I don't like it. And everyone around us was like, I really like this movie. I really love this movie. I really love this movie. And he said, all right, I got to watch it again. So he watched it again, and he hated it more the second time.
I'm kind of like, I get it. I'm in the Neil camp. Like, I was like, what is this movie? Like, they're sitting in chairs.
The beauty of that movie, looking back on it, is probably the particularity of it. The fact that it does polarize, but the people that love it really love it. And the people that don't like it just don't like it. There's very few people that goes, yeah, that was nice. I liked it. Like, right, no one says that about that movie, which I think is today a really important and speaks to what you said earlier, even about Barbie and other properties, which is like, go for something, have a point of view. And I love I think it's Rick Linklater said this. If you're really great at something, lean into that. Don't try to make people good and fair to get them to a good to very good, because that's not the way to win an audience. And I agree with that. I think in raising your children, if they're great at skiing and biology and they're not good at reading and math, don't get them a reading and math tutor. Get them skiing instructor and a friggin' lab in your house.
Well, I think it's exactly what we were talking about before, which is like, don't be everything for everyone. Lean into things that feel authentic and singular and bold and different and scary. And that is where the magic happens. I always say to my children, have conviction in what you do. Have conviction. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks or whatever. Go at it like with everything you have. And if you fail miserably in it.
Yeah, I want to just bring up this notion of feathered fish, though, before we get off this topic, because Barbie could have been perceived as a feathered fish in a way. Like, what are you trying to do here? Who are you trying to appeal to? Fortunately, it appealed to, we don't even call them quadrants, it appealed to octants, which I call ways in which we look at an audience, like boys, girls, moms, dads, teen boys, teen girls, general audience males, general audience females who are non-parents. Like, it appealed to all of those 8 segments in some form or fashion. It could have been, as you said, gone a whole different way. But at the end of the day, it wasn't a feathered fish. I'm wanting you to answer the question of why it wasn't. What was it?
Well, when I first read the script, I actually, I closed my door. It was COVID. It wound up in my inbox after just really, sort of having that notion that it was going to be about this high heel and the Birkenstock. So here, you can imagine I didn't even know. I just remember getting a script and it said on the front cover, I know it's 147 pages, but don't worry, people will speak very, very, very quickly. So I turned the page and leapt into reading the script. But I remember, first of all, I was like talking to myself. I was just like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. This is incredible. This feels so unique. I've never seen anything or felt anything or experienced anything else like I've read.
That's your superpower, girlfriend. I'm sorry. That is your superpower. You see that. And I so respect and admire it. I mean, seriously. Wow.
Well, when I put this down, I thought, this is the Wizard of Oz. It reminded me of the Wizard of Oz, about this woman, this girl, who goes on this journey to understand all of these people and all of these things, that comes back to realize, okay, after this journey, I'm not the same person anymore.
And there's no place like home.
Right, exactly.
Robbie Brenner, you're just the greatest. I've always speak so hyperbolically about people that are my guests. And the connective tissue of this program is that I basically have worked with everybody and know everybody. You and I have a very deep connection. And I just think your passion and your intensity and your tenacity and sheer you will things to happen is so admirable. And all I can say to you is, zoo-doo-zoo-zoo.
Do-do-do-do.
Take it back.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I love you beyond words. I think you are so special and amazing, and I feel so honored that you asked me to be on your show.
Thanks.
To our listeners, I hope you enjoyed our interview. If there's anyone in the world who hasn't seen Barbie yet, I encourage you to do so. Also, keep your eyes peeled for more movies coming from Mattel inspired by their various toy brands. For other stories like this one, do check out my book, Audienceology, at Amazon or through my website at kevingets360.com. You can also follow me on my social media at kevingets360. Next time on Don't Kill the Messenger, I'll welcome the great comedy director, writer, and producer, Will Gluck. Until then, I'm Kevin Getz. And to you, our listeners, I appreciate you being part of the movie-making process. Your opinions matter.